Good evening to everybody. I want to thank for all of you for taking the time to listen to us today. I'd like to say that the origin of this conversation that we're going to have today lays in several phone calls that I received last week from friends in different countries asking me, how's the situation in Brazil? How are things going there? What are the challenges that you guys are facing in the power sector? And how are you guys solving them? And at some point, after a few of these calls, I thought, well, perhaps the best is to get together a group of friends who really know what we're talking about here and discuss the different points in a more formal manner and open it to everybody who's interested. Out of this, turns out that we had this morning confirmed more than 400 people only in the LinkedIn invitation from the US, from Colombia, from Peru, from Chile, in the US. So with this, let me do quickly some introductions. First of all, I'd like to welcome Adriana Valtric. She is the CEO of São Simão Energia and the General Director of Pacific Hydro here in Brazil. Adriana is an executive from the sector. She's worked in different companies. She's been the Corporate Strategy Director for CPFL and is working in many other companies in the sector as well. She's a business administrator here in Brazil, and she holds an MBA from MIT, from this Sloan School of Business. Adriana, thank you very much for being here and welcome.
Thank you.
I'm also very happy to have Reynaldo Passanesi with us, the CEO of CEMIG. CEMIG is one of our largest and more important energy companies in Brazil. Transmission, distribution, generation is the company of energy of the states of Minas Gerais. Reynaldo has experience in the sector. In fact, he was the president of CETIP. CETIP is the company of transmission of electricity of São Paulo, that today is owned by the Grupo ISA, Colombia. But he also has background in the financial sector, having been the country manager from BBVA in Brazil. Reynaldo has studied a lot, so I'm just going to summarize some of his titles here. He's a PhD in economics from the University of São Paulo, Master of Economics from the University of Campinas, and he also has a specialization in leadership and innovation from Stanford University. So Reynaldo, welcome tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Let me go ahead with Italo Freitas, President of AES in Brazil. What I have to say about Italy is he's an executive that has worked his way up in the organization over the last 14 years, starting as an engineering and performance, moving to maintenance and operations, being vice president of generation in the AES organization, and finally all the way up to being president. Italo is a mechanical engineer from the University of Pernambuco. He has a master's degree in energy, environmental, and water resource, and from the University of Campinas. And he also has an MBA in finance from the University of Murcia in Spain. And last but not least, my friend Marcus Marielis, CEO of Rio Energy. Marcus started the company basically along with us at Denham 8 years ago. But before that, he was an entrepreneur on his own. Then before that, he was a consultant with PSR, mostly in Latin America. And he also worked for Furnas as an engineer of operations. So with this, I'd like to dive in directly into the questions. And first question to everybody is, what are the main challenges that COVID-19 has presented for your companies? And how are you addressing those challenges? So let me start here with Adriana.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, for us, there is clearly a top priority and focus on health and safety of all employees, but not only their families and the communities also. So we are every day also seeing the enlarging role of the corporation, partnering with municipal, state, and federal governments for the solutions of a huge crisis. And most of all, what I have mostly seen in our company, but in most of the companies, is a shift of focus. Now we are not so much short term, we are looking at survival and longer term. So that's my main thoughts for what I've been seeing in this great crisis we're living.
Very good. Marcus, your turn.
Yeah, as Adriana has pointed out, we are living a crisis. So what we have done is just to define a little bit of the guidelines that we are going to follow during this crisis. So the guideline of Rio Energy is safety first. So safety not only for the Rio Energy team, but all over stakeholders that we have along of our projects. Second one is to maintain the plants that we have already in operation to sustain the company for the long term, and try to minimize the third priority is try to minimize a little bit the impact that we have of the project that are under construction right now. In order to do that, we established several committees inside the company. One big one that's the crisis committee, and the other ones operational, construction, and health and safety. So to design, first assess the situation, design, elaborate a plan, and then go to implement that plan. First, establish good channels of communication with all the stakeholders in order to transmit what are the plans. Establish new criteria and new protocols in terms of safety and health. Implement that and understand that it's to change the habits of the people. So you have to monitor very closely that. So that was the guidelines that we implemented the first time, and we can talk a little bit along our conversation here about some specifics.
Thank you, Marcos. Reynaldo, CEMIG is a really large organization, generation, transmission, distribution. How are you guys facing this, and what would you decide? What would you think are the most important challenges you guys are facing?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Victor. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I would say more or less the same as Adriana and Marcus already mentioned. Priority for us is health and safety for our employees and for all those that work on behalf of CEMIG. We're talking about 20,000 people. It's a large amount of people, and to provide health and safety, all procedures, all protocols and instructions that have to fulfill all the procedures that are issued by the health secretary. This is quite important for us. I'm very happy to say that at least up to now, there's no confirmed COVID infection in our team. So this is quite good news for us. Of course, Minas Gerais is doing very well, and we are also doing very well. The same for all our customers, the same for the society, to provide the best quality of the service and to provide electricity and power for everyone. Regarding our assets on the generation, we used to have two control operation. Right now we have three, so we have an additional one that we decided to reopen, and the same for the distribution. Our operation control center, we have 6 divided among the state in regional areas. So this is again a large effort. We also have people that are working at home that as a backup. Okay, so if there is a problem in part of the team, we have a backup team for generation, for the power plants, and also for the distribution operation control. We provided, of course, masks for everybody, alcohol gel, all these. And we also test everyone that comes to the operation control with a temperature, and right now also the anti-tests. So this is like the most important for us is to guarantee the safety and the health for our team, for those that work on our behalf. I think everyone that is listening to us, their great work. And of course, this is quite important for the whole population.
Great. Thank you very much. And Italo, how is AES facing this situation today?
Great. Yeah, again, I think that the most important thing in our company is health and safety for our employees and for the municipalities and cities around our operation. One thing very important for us is maintain the value for our shareholder. It's very important to guarantee the company health in that situation. The other thing I think that is understand our customer. Our customer, we know that is facing the same problem that we are facing today with this all the pandemic situation. So we need to hear them and we need to understand them and try to together work with them. The other thing is guarantee the reliability of the system, because all the systems support hospitals and homes to the internet and all the stuff, data centers, and we need to guarantee. I think that all these companies that right now talking about they are one pieces of this entire system that have to guarantee the reliability. We have our operations center. We control all our plants from wind, solar, and hydro, nine hydro plants from one operation center. We are using technology a lot right now. So using drones, underwater drones, airplane drones, and to guarantee that our employees is in a good safety environmental. And the operation is very in contact with our maintenance team and our engineer monitoring system to guarantee the health of and reliability of the machines.
As an investor, I have to say that I'm very glad to hear how consistently you guys are talking about your response. Number one, I'd like to highlight that you are concerned for the whole overall well-being of the organization. Nobody here went out crazy firing people left and right. On the contrary, you guys have made an effort to keep your teams so that you can respond to the situation. I think that's a great thing. And then the other, taking into account your customers, the operations, and the communities. I believe that such a response is what, in the end, is going to take all of us to the other side of this crisis. So thank you very much for that. Let's move now to another question. And I want to start on this one with Reynaldo, who is more involved in the regulated environment of the power sector here in Brazil through CEMIG. We know consumption of electricity has dropped about 15% or so, from 71 gigawatts average in the weeks before the crisis of COVID-19 to about 60 gigawatts today. That puts a lot of stress in the system, particularly in distribution companies. So Reynaldo, I'd like to ask you, one, to give a little bit of color to the audience, and thinking as well of our international audience, the kind of stress that's put in distribution companies, and how are we solving that situation in the short term, and then if there are long-term measures that you think should be taken.
Hi, Victor. You're absolutely right. Besides all the efforts that we have to fulfill regarding health and safety, of course, the financial safety of the company is fundamental. And what's going on, and I hope it happens just for the distribution and the generation and the transmission keep protected. I hope you will not have to suffer as much as I am right now. But what is happening is more or less the same. We have volume that decreased, as you said, around 15%. And we have delinquency that is around 20%. So if you add a lower demand, lower volume of 15%, and a delinquency rate of around 20%, this means less revenues of around 35%. And as you know, and let me try to explain here, the distribution is the collector of all the cash for the sector. Okay, so we collect all our revenues and then we pass through to the whole sector. And the distribution keeps around 20% of the total that is collected. So if you collect 100, you keep just 20, but your frequency is 20 and your volume decreased 15%, it means your cash decreased at least 15%. And you did not pay any operational expenses and any capex. Okay, so this is the challenge that we are facing. Of course, companies have a situation with cash, and so we have time to plan an exit of this, and this has to be solved by public policies that will add liquidity to the system. Okay, so we need to have an additional liquidity in order to fulfill all our obligations, all the obligations of the distribution companies, in order to protect the whole sector. And this is actually what is being discussed with the federal government, with ANEEL, with the regulator, and with the ministry. Part of it, the government understand is public policy, like for the low income. The low income right now, it's going to be paid full by the federal treasury. And part of it is actually a responsibility that would be passed through to the customer, to the final consumer. And this is what we are discussing. As this is an obligation that will be passed through to the customer, how to put initially cash to the distribution companies in a loan, what we call an ACR loan or an emergency loan, and then the customer that would have this obligation in the future would pay it. So this is more or less what we are discussing right now. We are discussing much more liquidity issues, and then we're going to have to discuss like the real issues of the delinquency will be a real loss or just a temporary loss. Okay, so this is something that, of course, it is impossible to know the extension up to now. But what I can tell you is that we are quite confident that we're going to be able to face this crisis and be better after it.
Which is about delinquency. The government, and I think it's appropriate, by the way. You think in the long term this might become an issue because people just get used to not paying the service in the long-term situation after the crisis is gone?
Is it for me again? Sorry, I did not, because I could not hear.
Your speech.
Okay, let me repeat again. I see somebody in the audience is asking whether delinquency could be an issue in the long term. People who don't pay now could get used to it because we have right now an order from the government that you should not cut the service for anybody who's not paying during the crisis. I personally think that's very appropriate. But after the crisis is gone, in the long term, do you think that might become an issue?
Actually, we have been discussing this question at our board today. This is an issue. Of course, it is an issue. It's not good that people start delinquency, start delaying payments. I do not think it's a long-term issue, but immediately after the exit of the crisis, it's going to be our challenge for people to return to the regular payments. You see, I really don't think this is a long-term issue. But immediately after the crisis, it's going to be an issue. For instance, the low income, they will have 3 months paid by the Treasury. Mm-hmm. Of course, after these 3 months, they will be used not to having to pay their bills. Okay. So you will have to put a marketing campaign, and they need to understand that this is important. It's an essential service.
Okay.
And right now, what we have is that because we cannot interrupt for the residential customers, other customers are also like have an incentive not to pay. And this is again a risk, okay? Because you know that it is forbidden for you to interrupt the service for the residential customers. And of course, the commercial and the industry, they think, well, let me try the same. And this is why it's not just a question about the long term. I think long term, this will return. But immediately after the crisis, it is an important question we have to address. And right now, it is important not to like spread it.
Okay, very good. There's several questions here, but in the interest of time, I actually want to move to Italo, who leaves this situation, but from the free market environment. Italo, what's your view on all those points?
Yeah, Vito. I think that it's not similar to what's happening with the distribution companies, but total similar, but is slow. We have a different behavior from different industry in the free market. There are industries or sectors that have low consumption or decrease their consumption, and we have other industries that increase the consumption. In fact, must relate to chemicals, must relate to something tied to how we fight against the coronavirus. For sure, this is a much more credit risk, because in the Brazilian free market we have some special clauses that we have a take-out pay, so the customer can go to the spot market and play there. But in the other hand, we have the credit risk for the free market. It's very important for sure to have a very good and balanced portfolio in our customer profile. So when you have a balance of commercialization companies, industries, C&I customers with a high or low level of risk, and generator as well, with a condition to support or negotiate in a better way the situation right now. But what we are seeing in that environmental, in the free market environmental, is the customer coming and asking for more. Depend of the size of the customer for sure, but they coming to asking for help in terms of understand the dynamic of the free market. Sometimes they move to the free market because of the price is much more is lower price than the regulated market, but the dynamic is very hard to understand in terms of price, in terms of hydraulic risk and all this stuff. So they are coming to us and understand and try to understand better the free market now. It could affect the future negotiation, but right now I think that they are more concerned when they talk about understand to avoid any other situation in the free market. Exactly.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask a question and have 5 seconds answer from each of you. Drop in consumption, in demand of electricity. People forecasting decrease in GDP of Brazil 5% or so. As an investor, I only want to invest money in things that are needed. So I would not necessarily develop and build more power plants today, other than those that are already in construction. Do you and your companies think that's going to happen as well? We're only going to build more power plants as consumption returns? Adriana, 5 seconds.
No, we believe in the longer term. We think this is one point of a long curve. So no, we look further.
Okay. Marcos.
I do agree with Adriana that we have to think a little bit in the long term. Our window that we think is a little bit different than other kinds of industry, because you need 3 years in order to put a plant in operation, and will last 20 years. For sure that we have to see the long term, but there will be some effects in the short term. There will be, and there will be projects that could be postponed because the negotiations that you have in the free market, people are a little bit scared about what happened to the revenues, and could take a step down and say, let's wait for a little bit to see if the ocean is a little bit calm and clear ahead.
Okay, Reynaldo.
I would add reliability and quality of the service. So this is also important for investment. It's not just growth, but also reliability and service quality.
Very important point for investments. Italo.
I think that I want to believe that crisis is not structural crisis. So I think that the economy for sure depends on the time that will be down, but the economy will be raised again in the near future in different stages, different industries, and saying that, I believe that for long term will be a very good to invest in Brazil.
Okay. Now let's move to another topic. In Brazil, we really don't have spot market for electricity. For our international audience, what we have is something that we call PLD. And for this question, although PLD is not spot market price, PLD would be the closest to that. So what has happened is PLD prices have dropped dramatically over the last few weeks. We have a band. PLD cannot be more like greater than 500 something reais per megawatt hour, and cannot be less than 39 reais per megawatt hour. We are at the floor right now, and this creates opportunities in the business, but also creates a lot of risks. Adrian, I want to direct this question to you because I believe you're an expert in this area. What are the main risk issues that you see with this situation, and where are the opportunities that companies should go after under this situation?
Yeah, life has tremendously changed, right? What I see is in the distribution side, which is the regulated business, we believe there will be regulated solutions, and we believe the government is already, and the regulators is working on some solutions for funding and over-contracting. But for the free market, then there is the risk of having to sell energy that is not yet contracted to anyone or in your portfolio at much lower prices. And I really mean lower prices. For us to have an example, in January, the PLD was 330 reais per megawatt hour. And now we are talking about 39 reais per megawatt hour. That's roughly 8 times higher than today. So there will be economic and financial losses, and players, for those players that still haven't contracted their energy, they might have to lose that amount of money. And those players with weaker balance sheets may be walking on thin ice, and they might present some financial risks. Of course, the severity of those risks will depend on the length and also on this extension of the outbreak. But obviously, as you mentioned, Victor, there will, on the other hand, there will be opportunities. For example, companies that for some reason are short in energy, they will have a big advantage on savings when they buy the commodity. And also, opportunities may be related to M&A. As some generation assets with uncontracted energy without PPAs might be more prone to negotiate, to sell stakes, or even consider different types of negotiations. So there is always opportunities in M&As when you see that kind of difference in prices. So those would be my main takes on these situations.
Okay. Marcus, what's your view on this? Because you also deal a lot with this topic.
Yeah, I agree with Adriana that there is opportunities when we talk about M&A and things like that. We have to take in mind when we talk about POD and energy price, because you have energy price related to contracts, and you have the POD, that's a price to settle deficits and superavits in the markets, surplus and deficit in the market. POD is in the floor for sure, but when you look the forward curves of price, you see that the effect of the price in 1 year ahead is around a little bit around 20%, but this 20% goes slow down very fast. In the second, third year, you see 5 reais per megawatt hours of difference, and then after that, the prices stay very stable, because in the end of the day, it's a long-term price. So depend upon the moment that you are going to do the contract. So that's the opportunity that you have. You understand a little bit about that, how you're going to play and how you're going to make money, but more than that, how you are going to protect your revenues, because everyone is going to lose a little bit. So what I see right now is how to protect, how to get stronger. And for sure that the people that are going over the obstacle that we have right now, if we go a little bit better over that, there is possibilities when you overcome that moment of M&A and things like that, even in the middle of that. That's the moment that we are living right now, and we have to realize that there is a lot of risk. I think more risk than opportunities, but will be few opportunities.
Great. Now, we've spoken about these topics mostly related to the crisis, but let's talk about something that is very important all the time to the power sector, which is the regulatory system. As an investor, I have to say that I've always saw an opportunity to invest in the power sector in Brazil, in part because Brazil has a very good and stable regulatory system that has actually helped the country go through several crises. So, of course, this framework is not stable. It evolves with time, and there is a full agenda of legislature going on. Let's talk a little bit about renewable energy and specifically solar distributed generation, Reynaldo. How do you see the evolution of regulation in this sense? We all know that distributed generation does not pay certain costs, etc. Is that going to change? How is that evolving? What is your view on solar distributed generation regulation?
Well, I think renewables are for sure the trend. Large renewables are quite competitive, and our view is that there's no need of subsidies anymore. So this is for me like the main message. We built renewables based on a lot of subsidies, and this is quite special on the distributed generator or the small scale plants. In this case, they do not have to pay the infrastructure, and it is almost impossible to compete. The federal government and the regulator tried to correct this policy, but was not successful. And for us, like Minas is the state that has more investment in distributed solar generation. And for the distribution company, it means immediately less revenues. But it is not the distribution company that will suffer more. It's those that cannot go to the free market, because they will have to pay this additional tariff. Because as the solar does not pay the infrastructure. All these revenues has to come from another part, and this other part is what we call the captive consumer, okay, or those that cannot go to the free market. So this is something that for sure the trend is on renewables, but we should decrease a lot the subsidies in the sector.
Okay. Continuing with regulatory agenda, and again, nothing related to the crisis, we have had the discussion of the hourly PLD and also about the GSF. Italo, can you talk a little bit about that? And for our international audience, provide a quick explanation of what the GSF is?
That's a tough mission, Victor. Included for us, not for international only. Well, the hourly prices came, I think that a couple of years ago. I think that the hourly price is something where the system or the regulation brings the contractual environment close to the operational environment. I think Marco mentioned that what's happening in Brazil. And I think that in the other countries, in the majority of the other countries, they use hourly price to plan the dispatch and have the entire contract tied to that hourly price, right? So I think that the effect in Brazil will be very good. We will have a lot of opportunity for business in Brazil using our hourly price. Again, Brazil today is weekly price. Okay, so it's a week ahead, and the intention is move to day ahead dispatch planning. For renewable will be a very good impact, I believe. For sure, we need to understand in the free market the load profile from the customer, and we need to cover that profile from the customer hourly by hourly, hour by hour. And for sure, Brazil have a lot of hydro, and hydro inside the condominium or outside the condominium have a good impact for flexibility. And for thermal will be a little bit more hard because the current fleet in Brazil is not a multi-cycling thermal. So in the most of the case, they are base load. So in an hourly price, you have to cover the ramp up curve and the shoot down curve. And for sure, we need to adapt our thermal plants to attend that using feeder like auxiliary boiler, redundancy in fuel water pumps, HRG prepared to do that. So we have a lot of things that currently our thermal plant doesn't have it. PSR, for example, PSR showed a very good presentation in a webinar, I think a couple of days ago, about the hourly price. And they have one thing that's very complicated for thermal, that is a unit commitment. So our thermal have to ramp up and stay generating for a long time, a week or 2 weeks, and this increased the total cost of the system. So I believe that thermal will be a little bit more complicated, but for renewable will be very good because of the price and because of you can mix with high flexible generation as a hydro and different type of profile generation like a daytime, nighttime, or even time from wind, and this will be good for the system. About the GSF, very shortly, GSF is something like all the hydros live in a condominium here in Brazil. If the condominium doesn't generate as was required, this gap will be paid for all of the condominium participants. So this gap is GSF, generate escalating factor. Okay, so there is a discussion between the generators and the regulator about what is the reasons for those impacts in GSF. And we believe that we got finalized that discussion. We have a law to be voted in the Senate, or at best to a low chamber, and now is in the Senate to be voted after this pandemic stuff, and probably will solve that problem for all hydro generators. And in the future, this will be a risk that all the investors have to put in their financial model.
Okay, it's very, very interesting. I know it could be a little bit technically complex, but it's a very, very important variable, as you said, to keep in mind when you're making an investment. It might move the needle in one sense or another. So thank you very much, Italo. In connection with all this, we have the free market becoming more and more important every day in the country. We used to kind of develop generation, at least based on the PPAs from the auctions. But now more and more, we're going through customers, whether they are large industrial consumers, whether they are trading companies. And it is a different way of doing business. It has opportunities, it has risks. Adriana, how do you see the role of the free market in the expansion of our power system? And as an investor, should I be looking to invest?
It's a great question. I think the free market is a great opportunity for Brazil. Even with the emergency of this crisis, we should not lose focus of the sector on the modernization of it, and and with the potential expansion of the free market, having initiatives such as lowering the thresholds for becoming a free client and having the freedom to choose your energy supplier, having the separation of physical guarantee from the energy, which means correcting the pricing of energy and the pricing of reliability of the system. So that would be very important and much more efficient for the consumers. And also having isonomic access to the grid for both free and regulated connectors or free or regulated energy. So also promoting auctions and long-term fund projects, for example, would be a very important initiative. So all these initiatives, we believe, would generate efficient incentives for players, and of course is good for the system as a whole. So that's a great opportunity. We should also, as investors, be looking in the near future. As soon as the crisis is a little bit over us, we should be looking into that. We strongly believe in that possibility.
Okay. Marcus, we with Rio Energy are, of course, highly involved in the free market now. What's your view on this point?
This is... we live in the world that is coming to that point. Free market is nothing that you can fight. It's a reality, and it's going to increase. There is no doubt about that. When you talk about free market, you talk about empowerment of the consumer, and it's happened not only in the power sector, it's everywhere. And the technology is enable people to do that. So technology, I think, is the main force of this empowerment of the consumers, and we have to live with that. For sure that it has more risk, the price, the negotiation is harder, everything is not easy. The generator and the renewable companies' world is not going to become easier. It's going to become harder. So I have to accept that is the environment that we are going to live. That's the free market, and this is only going to grow. In a few years, I don't know if it's going to be in 5 or it's going to be in 10, but all of the consumers are going to be free consumers.
Italo.
Yeah, just adding, perfect, Marcos. I think that just adding one thing that the digital will be a very critical point. I think that digital solutions to give access, easy access to the customer will be one of the way to accelerate the customer engagement in this free market, Marcos. I 110% agree with you, and this will be a very competitive world where renewable have a critical position.
I do agree a lot with you. And those words that in the past or a few years ago seems to be mad science, like AI, like IoT, they are there. They are already there. There is not technology that has to be developed. It's already there. It's going to implement this into the sector. Not only IoT, AI, but also blockchain in the future. How does it impact all the transactions in the power sector in the future? That's reality. It's already happening in the financial market. It's going to happen in the power trading market.
Okay, I completely agree with that. It is unavoidable. We'll need to understand the game and play the game.
This is
Now,
the waters that we have to sail.
okay.
So we
Now,
have to be good captains of our ships in order to move in that new environment.
okay. Now, of course, with Rio Energy, we've made investments mostly or solely in renewables, but the thermal energy, especially gas-fired, is very important for our system. It's the one that we can dispatch whenever we want, and it helps us balance the distribution networks. But I think thermal is now facing an interesting environment. On the one end, the drop of consumption, which a part of it is going to be temporary during the crisis, but another part of it, the one that has to do with the reduction of the GDP, if it is really 5%, is going to stay for a little bit longer than just the crisis. So we have a drop in electricity consumption. But then on the other end, we now have way lower oil prices. It should affect gas prices, LNG, etc. Marcus, I want to continue with you on this. What's your view of thermal electricity, thermal projects right now in front of these new variables? They were very different 45 days ago. We had certain projections of growth of demand. We had oil and gas prices at certain price. What's the new outlook? How do you see it? How do I think as investor in terms of those new projects? How do we think as a nation in the development of that specific source of electricity?
Just to quantify a little bit the drop that you are talking about, when you look to the Brent, the price of the barrel was around $71-72 per barrel last year, April. And nowadays, we are talking about, in the case of $28 per barrel today. So it's a drop of 62%, 63% of the price. The Henry Hub was $2.6 per million BTU last April of the last year. And today is 1.6. So we're talking a drop of 40% in the price that were already low. for the industry. So in that environment, how we are going to plan the expansion of the system in Brazil? How important would be natural gas to the power system? I think that question, we have to look a little bit with a broader perspective, because the impact of gas for me is not going to be in the power sector. The real impact to help the economy would be lower price of gas to the industrial consumers, to the end consumers. I think thermal power plant will be the anchor to do that for the future. But that has a price, because we can do that without the thermal power plants. With the technology available nowadays and the price that we have from renewables, solar and wind, we can do that without thermal. That's the reality. We can do. With the technology available today, with the competitiveness of wind and solar, we can do that without natural gas. But we have to think a little bit bigger than that. And I think it's a country policy. It should be a Ministry of Mines energy policy, because they will put additional cost into the power sector that's not needed, in my opinion. And you have to do the right calculations to do that. But this is important to develop the whole infrastructure of natural gas and make the whole country a little bit more competitive when you talk the whole price of energy, not only electricity. That's the question that I have nowadays. And no one has done those kind of calculations in order to have a clear discussion about the natural gas. But I do believe that one of the things that they are doing right is that it's not about only to have the gas of pre-salt. You need the pressure of competition of LNG in order to lower down the price of natural gas. Different source of natural gas to turn that natural gas quite competitive to get to the end consumers. That's my view about natural gas.
Okay, Adriana, we're running short in time, but I do want to hear your opinion on this.
Yes.
I know you know this space very well, and we need to hear from you.
Very quickly, we believe with the run-of-river hydros and with the intermittency of the renewables, we do need some firm load in the system. So natural gas, the gas from pre-salt, depending on pricing, of course, could be a successful option in our view, mainly for three reasons. We need a firm load in the power metrics. There will be an abundance of the commodity forecasted in the pre-salt. And also we see the closeness to the high consumption center, especially considering that the pipeline infrastructure in Brazil is still very incipient. So with those three factors, we believe the pre-salt might represent an opportunity. We need to deep dive in those details. And I understand that the gas is very low, but it is in US dollars, the imported gas. And we have a huge devaluation of the real. So having that commodity in Brazil might be important for the system. Of course, we need to deep dive in those numbers, but look in the future, it might be a good anchor for the metrics.
Great. Two more questions, 6 minutes. So we're going to do following questions, 5 seconds. The crisis is really going to have a great impact in many things. One obvious one is the world became more digital. There's nothing to do about it. We're doing more digital transactions. We're buying groceries online. We are executing financial transactions online. We're doing everything online. There's going to be changes in consumption behavior, etc. So in 5 seconds, what are the main changes that you see from this crisis related to the power industry? And I want to go back, start with you, Adriana.
So, well, there is a new normal. As you said, working remotely will be more mainstream than ever. and therefore IT is not a support function anymore. Now IT is a core function for all of us, for all of our companies. That's my 5 seconds take on that.
Great. Italo.
Yeah, Vitor, I think that the change will be the world will take the sustainability more seriously, and renewable will be the main way to do that. I think that renewable, I put some in my LinkedIn, I put some study from Harvard where they said they compare the fossil fuel impact in the COVID-19 death ratio. So I think that this will be one of the critical points, sustainability using renewable generation.
Okay. Reynaldo, your turn.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about collection. You see, it has to go digital. Just for you to have an idea, at Semigi, almost 60% of our transactions are settled in lotteries and banking correspondence. So this is going to change a lot, and it's going to go digital. It's going to go internet. It's going to go digital for sure. This is a huge change. Just realize that 60% of all transactions are settled in lotteries and banking correspondence, like supermarkets, drugstores.
Okay. And Marcos.
I would like to point out the same thing that people put in their speech right now. I do believe that this kind of crisis generates a necessity that will change the habits of people towards technology. So I think all technology that we are talking about that will change profoundly our sector. That's IoT, AI, blockchain, digital revolution is going to come faster than if we don't have this crisis right now, because people get used to the technology. People that, even my father that hates those kind of things, is using technology.
Okay.
So
okay.
Sometimes necessity creates the creativity of the people and take them from their zone of comfort. I do believe that it has happened with this crisis about technology.
Okay. Last question, and again, it's going to have to be a 5-second answer for each of you. This one not related to the power sector. This one is more to our corporate responsibility as corporate citizens in the nation. How can each of our companies help the system restart again? How can we help the economy to grow after this crisis? How can we support those that are more needed? What is the role that each of our companies can play in a larger sense when you look at us as citizens of a nation? And Adriana, let's start with you again.
Okay. Well, as people say, we should never let a crisis go without learning, right? So in a few seconds, what I see is more collective solutions and more capitalism with purpose, well-being of communities, sustainability, as Italo mentioned, in the long term will be high in everyone's agendas. And so that's a good outcome of this crisis. We'll think more collectively, and that will be good for humanity.
Italo.
Oh, I see. In terms of our company, I think that if you do small things and put together, that thing will be big. So what we are doing right now is helping the areas and cities and communities around our plant, and we call other CEOs. I belongs to the Pacto Global. And I think that if every leader bring that idea to impact in the communities around their operation, together we'll change and we'll bring back the economy to a better level.
Reynaldo.
Sorry. First, social responsibility and sustainability. This is something that is surprising me a lot. You see, all the donations that large companies are doing right now, this is incredible. We are also doing it at CEMIG. We're going to donate up to $10 million, more or less, depending. It depends on people that go and update their info at our site. But this is a campaign that we are doing right now, and many other companies. I think that this is something that is adding like a new way of thinking companies in Brazil. And for me, it's new. It's actually new because people are used to say, these companies just think about profits. And we are seeing a lot of large companies putting sustainability issues, social responsibility, and a lot of donations. For me, this is incredible, and it's making links quite positive with the community. And as I came here to Minas Gerais, I would say that this was the first thing that for me was like a life-changing. How can I help the state of Minas Gerais? And if there is something that I learned, is how large corporations can have a huge impact on the economy and on society. And this is our responsibilities as CEO, as officers of these large companies. Actually, how can we add value and foster the development of our societies? This is something that is great. And when you are in a large corporation, you have to understand that the impact you can do is much bigger.
Marcos, 5 seconds.
Yeah, I go together with Italo because I do believe in think globally, but actually act locally. And I do believe that you have to do the small things that you can do. And when you integrate that along the way, and I talk that with all my team at Rio Energy, let's make a difference, everyone, every single one, when we interact with our stakeholders. Let's try to do our best in that moment. That's the moment that people that are ready, that people that has worked hard, that has developed skills, has to step up and make the statement and try to do things a little bit better to everyone. So I do agree a lot with Italo that it's an integration of small things that you can do, and everyone should try to do that. And more than that, I do believe that we have to share those kinds of experience that we have and good practices things that we make right, that shows a lot of impact. Go to our associations, Abeólica, Abracel, any kind of association, and try to create a group in order to share those initiatives and the impact of those initiatives on the local communities. When we change small things, and everyone trying to change small things, when we add that together, it will be a huge impact to the regain of our system, to recompose our system.
Thank you very much. I guess in all times, but specifically in crisis, we all have to individually carry our own burden. But we also need to play as a team. We also need to know that we're part of a society and we have responsibilities towards it. So I'm very glad as an investor and as a person to see that this crisis is really getting the best out of people and companies and making them start new behaviors that hopefully will last long term and will help all of us to do better business and to create a better society. This space here, I want to thank my friends for taking the time, my 4 friends in the panel, and share your views. Part of this is to exchange ideas, to confront points of view, and hopefully get something out, something good of these conversations. We'll be doing more, and thank you very much for all of you who listening today and took the time to hear about the opinion of these experts. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. It was a pleasure to be with you in that panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Amen.
Good night.
Thank you.